Hi creators, welcome or welcome back to Academic Phoenix Plus. My name is Monica and I am your guide through your creative journey. In this video, we're going to be covering how to UV map Caitlyn's rifle from Arcane. UV mapping can be pretty complicated, so we're going to be going over a lot of tools and hopefully it will help you UV map anything. If you are new to this channel, I post tutorials on a weekly basis. Software includes Maya, ZBrush, Substance Painter, and so much more. So if that is your sort of thing, please consider subscribing. So bring out that creativity, open up that software, and let's go ahead and UV map Caitlyn's rifle from Arcane. And of course, getting it ready for texturing, which is the best part. All right, our favorite thing, UV mapping. So here's my model. Let's go to the workspace for UV mapping. And I'm going to start off with the stock, because I felt like maybe that's the easiest part. So when I'm UV mapping, I usually use the same methods, which is I have a tendency to project planar mapping on one side and then I cut it. Now for this one, I usually have an edge in the middle that I can cut. As you can see, I cut it and then I unfolded it. So then that way I can find an edge that these guys can actually stitch together. Then of course I unfold. So the idea is always to project and then sew it together. Now this one, I remember that I wanted the butt of the rifle. I wanted it to be separate. It's going to be a totally separate material. So I did cut it out and combine them together so that I don't have to worry too much about it. So again, I projected it, I cut it, I sewed it together, and I unfolded. So that's one portion of it. Now, I'm not a big fan of the way it's stretching, but I thought that, I can look at that later as I get my muscles of UV mapping exercise. So in this one, I'm also going to planar map, but this time I'm planar mapping from the Y at the top and unfold. So that one was easy. So probably should have started with that one. This one is a cylindrical map. I decided to do automatic mapping, and then I was going to sew it together. And the seam, I'm going to try to put it at the bottom because I'm not interested in having the seam at the top. So what I'm trying to do is just make sure the seam is at the bottom so no one gets to see it. And now there's always some little puckers, so I'm grabbing those edges and then I'm going to sew them so that the texture is as smooth as possible. Usually the beveled edges are the most challenging part because they are little pieces that don't get projected very well in automatic mapping, but in this case I'm trying to figure out where they belong, and they belong inside the front of the cylinder. So I decided to go ahead and sew them together and then, or stitch them together. And now I'm grabbing edges because there's a little like V's that are actually the same vertex or the same edges. So then I unfold and basically keep sewing it until it's nice and smooth. Now I know the inside's also there, so I just select those edges and then stitch together. I'm going to do the same method again. I'm going to grab those edges from inside the circle, then I'm going to grab those edges that look like little V's and sew them. Then I unfold, grab those edges again, and then I stitch together. Now I'm going to actually sew these pieces. This rifle has a few pieces, so I want to make sure they stay together. You can transfer your UVs. If it's the exact same model and the exact same geometry, then you can actually transfer. So that's a really easy way to transfer your UVs. So mesh transfer attribute to make sure component is active. Now this piece was a pain to model. It was also a pain to UV map, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to UV map this because there's a variety of pieces of geometry, and you're going to find out that I'm starting to notice that there's some weird hiccups in the mesh, that there's some edges that don't continue on. So that means I have n-gons, and that could cause future issues when I try to render, when I try to bring it into Substance Painter or anything like that. So basically I'm just going through trying to figure out what edge do I need, what edge don't I need, try to remove them, add them, and there's always going to be a little bit of modeling involved. Now I'm also concerned that there's a little pucker and I can see that they're not together, so I'm going to go ahead and select those vertices and merge them so that now it is one piece instead of having a weird little hole, unnecessary hole in the center of the model. Now I'm trying to figure out where these edges are coming from. So you can see that I just created some edges using the multi-cut, and now I've made it into one edge all the way across. And I'm also going to go ahead and add a couple more beveled edges just because I feel like I might have accidentally erased them, things like that. So again, it's always a progress. Now what I'm going to do is try to find the center, and I am going to cut it by selecting those edges and clicking on cut. The trick here is shift right click, and then you can get all of these attributes, and then I'm going to go ahead and unfold these pieces. Again, it's like peeling a banana. You're just opening it up. Now the question is that I was trying to figure out is, do I really want to stitch everything together in a certain way? And I ended up splitting them into 2 pieces, which you'll see in a moment. But here I am trying to figure out, okay, what's the best method? I feel like these long pieces should be together, which I'm stitching together right now, unfold, unfold. And I'm trying to look at it and I'm like, okay, that seems okay. And then I select these faces and then I unfolded it. I stitched it together and unfolded it, and it looked really bad. So I undid that and I kept them separate. Now you can see that it still looked bad. The texture is stretching. So I went ahead and did some cuts, and I'm going to be trying to fix that as well. So the idea is that I just have to find that inner edge and then cut it. I'm going to keep cutting until I feel like the stretching isn't so bad. Now the interesting part is if I press the number 3 in this, the stretching is not so bad. So I think I'm okay with this, and I'm going to keep moving on. Okay, this is the trigger guard. And let's go ahead and project again. We're going to project on the side. And now I just have to figure out where I'm going to cut. Now the inside faces are always going to be a challenge because they need to be separated. So that's what I'm doing right now, is cutting along the edge. And I'm also going to delete geometry that I don't need. So I'm going to isolate, select, and then see if these pieces are necessary. And if I don't need to UV map them, I am not going to UV map them. So I'm going to go through and make sure that the edges selected are cut. And then I am going to unfold to see if it works. It's going to tell me to fix some geometry. So obviously I have an end gone somewhere in there, but it didn't screw anything up that I can tell. So I went ahead and said fix, and everything seems okay. So I'm not too convinced by that inside edge here. So I decided to just go through and separate it so it's nice and cut. And again, I'm going to unfold these, and there we go. It is 3 pieces. I'm not too happy about that, so I am going to try to find one edge that they can match. And the UV is going to look a little weird, I will agree, but as long as the grid is okay and consistent, it's good. Now, I felt that it was strange that one side was cut and the other side of the model was not cut, so I went ahead and I cut it again. And so now they have like equal pieces. I also thought this part was a little odd. I'm not sure why it was not, the UVs weren't really unfolding properly. But I went ahead and just moved on. So move it out of the way. Okay, this one's pretty easy. It's a planar map. Again, same story. I'm going to look through it. I'm going to isolate, select. There's faces that I don't need, so I'm going to delete them. I'm confirming that I don't need them. And then I can go ahead and start UV mapping. So in this case, I'm going to bring them in just a little bit. Make sure that the geometry fits into the model. And now I'm ready to unfold, and it looks terrible. So now I have to figure out where to cut it. So I'm going to cut it along that length. Again, shift right click, cut, and then unfold and see what that looks like. And that looks a lot better, and I'm happy with that. So moving on. All right, this piece. Again, I like to planar map. You're going to notice that I project like that all the time. And I thought that maybe I would fix this mesh because I thought I was going to animate it, but we'll see. So I decided to delete some faces, grab some edges, and then make a cut. You can see that I've cut it over there, and that is in 2 pieces. So I'm trying to figure out where's the best place to put a seam, and I felt this is the one that you're going to see the gun, the weapon a lot. So I decided to go ahead and do that. Now this is the same model, so I tried to transfer attributes and it didn't work. So instead I duplicated it, and then I flipped it over 180 degrees so it's on the other side. It's very, very fancy. So I'm trying to find the channel box. There it is. All right, great. Moving on. Some people would use cylindrical. I personally like to use planar mapping because I get to select the edges that I want to cut. And for this one, for whatever reason, I really struggled with until I finally was like, what am I doing? But you're going to see that in this stage, I am actually trying to clean up a little bit of the mesh. I have triangles at the bottom. I have an end gun in the center, and I'm just like, I'm not too convinced by this. So I'm trying to find a home with it using a multi-cut. So I'm cutting all the way across, and then I'm going to delete an edge. So I have quads along this piece. Now, the funny thing is that the same piece is on the other side, but that one you don't see. So I delete it, which makes my life easier when you don't have to, you know, if you don't see the mesh, why keep it? Why UV map it? Not the best piece of geometry I've ever made in my life, but that's okay. As you can see, I don't see it, that face, so I deleted it, and then I'm going to unfold. Now it has this really long strand, and I was like, that looks That looks really silly. So I'm going to stitch together and unfold it, and it just looks a little funny, and it should be pretty smooth. And then I remember that this piece in the front is going to actually be a different material. So it's okay to have a seam there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I am going to stitch the other pieces together, and there we go. We now have two pieces. So the trick when I'm going to UV map this together, like lay it out, I want to try to keep the silver pieces together so that I can texture it really easily in Substance Painter. Now this one's pretty easy. It's just a triangle. It's a planar map, but I decided to delete some faces. And I wasn't too convinced with the way it unfolded. So in this piece, I'm going to delete a couple more faces, and then I'm going to cut the edges around the corner. No one's really going to see this too much. Now you do have to be careful when you delete faces. In this case, when I double clicked, it selected the whole thing. So that means I manually have to go in and select those pieces. So I'm going to go through and just kind of manually select them. So you can see it keeps selecting more and more stuff by accident. But the key here is to try to get those faces deleted. And then I can make some little cuts on each corner. So I'm going to select each corner and select some edges to cut, so that it kind of spreads open a little bit easier. There you go. As long as the little triangle matches, is good. Now in this case, because I changed the geometry, I am going to duplicate it. So I erased the one side, duplicated it, and flipped it to the other side, so that I now have the exact same UVs. Don't forget to save. Very important. Okay, going down here, I'm going to automatic map and see how it goes. Automatic mapping is a hit miss, but usually it does pretty good with hard surface stuff, especially if it's quadratic. So in here, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut right around this edge here, and now I'm going to try to start stitching things together to see if it's going to work. And I wasn't too convinced with this, so I decided to cut the whole thing, stitch these guys together, and then hopefully everything's going to align correctly. So I felt like everything looked good on these pieces, and I was like, why doesn't it just stitch together? And it did. So now I have this funny little piece. Looks like a Triton almost. And now I'm ready to go for the inside pieces. These inside pieces are going to be by themselves, but I definitely want to make sure that they're stitched together. So I'm going to go in and try to stitch all those inner pieces, at least be together, so that it's easy to texture and there's less seams. So here I am sewing, unfolding, and trying to make sure that everything's aligned as well as possible. Again, I'm not a big fan with the puckers, so make sure that if you see a little V and those two edges are the same, to go ahead and sew them together to avoid any type of like weird stretching. I mean, overall, it's such a small edge that no one's probably going to see it, but you know, you might as well, if you're going to do this, you might as well do a good job. So here I am doing the same thing. I'm going to be stitching together, and then I'm going to look for those little V's, make sure everything's sewn together, so the less seams there are, the better we're off. And now I'm trying to figure out, where am I going to put this piece? Do I want to put it up here? I was not convinced, so I undid. There's just not enough room, so I might have to keep it on its own. So now I'm just stitching again. Again, there's those little V's. I'm going to go ahead and unfold. And now I'm trying to figure out, where am I going to place this? You can see here that I'm going to sew these pieces together. Unfold. Go back to this one. And I'm trying to see, where are these pieces coming from? I feel like I'm missing something. I see a bunch of edges, and I need to know where those seams are so that I can reduce my edges as much, or border edges as much as possible. So now I'm going to go ahead and start sewing, selecting faces, unfolding, and so on and so forth. So this piece was interesting because I really wanted it to, I'm trying to avoid as many edges as possible, so I'm trying to sew them together. And I'm trying to figure out, where is this? And another face that I can delete. Love it. So now I have all of these. Now again, I didn't want extra edges like this. It seems like a lot. I was trying to figure out, where in the world can I put this? Because having 4 pieces seems like a lot, but decided to move on and work on it. So this one's going to be a cylindrical map, because after all, the barrel is a cylinder. And I could have used the little red T and rotated it, but you also have the attribute editor, which you can use for rotation. So give that a shot. The key though is to figure out, where do you want your seam, and I decided to put it at the bottom. So in this particular area, it's going to be a different material. So I decided to use a planar map, and now I have this completed. So that one was pretty easy. Again, I wasn't there. I felt like there was an extra face, so I selected, and I wanted to see what was going on. So I'm going to select that face. Don't need it. And I also don't need these faces, which is great. So again, if I don't see them, well, UV map them. And it's also causing stretching. So now I can unfold, and that looks way much better. Now this one I was trying to figure out why I was rotating. I found it very strange. And the reason why it's very long and no one's going to see it. So I left it as is. All right, this piece is also a cylinder. So I'm going to cylindrical map. Again, I'm going to use the attribute editor to rotate it. Easy peasy. And you'll notice that it made it huge. And this is a reminder that the UV editor window, it's humongous. You can put as much stuff as you want in there. Of course, everything has to end up at the 0 to 1 space, but you have a lot of places to work. So again, I'm deleting unnecessary faces, unfolding, and there we go. Now these little guys are small, so I decided to do a cylindrical mapping and not UV map the center of the sphere or anything like that. I felt like this is going to be a very small detail. And now I'm going to transfer the UVs by clicking on the letter G. So don't forget that letter G means that it's your last command. So I selected one, and then transfer the attributes, and then click G for the other ones. This piece is relatively easy. It's just a cube. So this one I'm just selecting edges, stitching them together. Anything that I can do to prevent border edges, I'm going to try. I'm going to unfold, and then I'm going to find out where all of these extra pieces are. Again, I'm going to be stitching together, making sure everything looks good, and always unfold. I think everybody has a little home. There's those little V's that I was telling you guys about. Select them and sew. We don't need them. It's those beveled edges can be a little bit of give you extra work, but that's okay. The bevel edges are important to help support the hard surface model. All right, we have another one. This is just the trigger itself. I planar mapped, and I am going to be cutting it again, just like all the other ones. I'm going to isolate, select, and delete faces that I don't need. I decided to unfold and see how it looks, and I thought it looked funny. So let's go ahead and select particular edges so that it actually opens up. That's my unfold. It does have a funny little hole. So again, I'm trying to figure out why is it looking like that? And then I unfolded again. I'm going to select those edges and stitch together and unfold again. And that's how I get the triggers. All right, let's take a look. Make sure everything's looking good, which it is. Next, we're going to do texel density. Texel density means that all the pieces are going to be the same grid. So I'm going to do a 2K map. I'm going to do get and then set. And you can see there's some pieces that didn't go in there in the layout. So I'm going to try again. I'm going to delete the history, freeze the transformations, get, set, and then click on layout. And I never like the way it lays out because I feel like there's such a waste of space and everything's all over the place. So now I'm going to spend a good amount of time just kind of Tetrising it. So that means I'm like, okay, well, let me see which piece is going to be like the gold or the silver material, which one's going to be the weapon, which one's going to have the more important information and more details and things like that. So again, it kind of puts everything into a texel information. So the grid's all the same on every single one of them. But then I go through and just make sure that I maximize the 0 to 1 space. Again, anything automatic in Maya is really nice, but it gets you about 75% of the way, and then you have to go in and fix it. So it got me where I needed to be, and now I'm just going to go in and Tetris this. Now, I'm not too convinced about the stock of the rifle, so I'm actually going to cut it and have it as 2 separate pieces. I usually don't like to do that, but I just felt like the warping was too much, and it's such an important piece that I'm just like, you know what, let me just straighten these out. So I separated them, and now there we go. That's really important to rotate them and unfold them to make sure they're not facing the wrong way. So these are all small pieces that I'm going to wait for later. As you can see, I have a lot of little small pieces, and I'm going to make them a little bit bigger because I know I'm going to need some detailed information. But again, I'm not scaling it dramatically. It's going to be small. I'm also rotating them. If you can right click and rotate your UVs so they're facing the correct way. So for me, it's important that they're facing a certain direction when I can texture it. Forgot one piece. I'm going to just go ahead and planar map, and There we go. Just a little thing. Now, there's some pieces that do need a lot of space, like the stock. I would say the stock needs a lot of space. The muzzle needs a lot of space. So you're going to see me just kind of trying to fit this as best as possible, rotating it and trying to squeeze them as best as I can, and scaling them, moving them, and get really close because I don't want any type of overlapping UVs. You'll notice that I'm only scaling a little bit. I'm not going dramatic here. I'm not trying to make one piece have way higher resolution. I do want to make sure that the rifle has equal resolution on all the pieces. So it's important to just kind of go through and scale it just a little bit, not too much. All right, more Tetrising, more rotating, selecting pieces, trying to squeeze them here, squeeze them there. This one is an odd shaped piece. I'm still not convinced by it, but I decided to leave it as is. So now I'm just trying to figure out ways to, I know there's a way. There's got to be a way to be able to rotate these pieces and finagle them so that they fit, so I can put the weird pieces in. So I'm just trying to figure out where am I going to put it. As you can see, I'm rotating them. Sometimes if it's a non-important piece, I might actually scale them down a little bit. Like these little guys are just these little gold cylinders that are not really even that well UV mapped, so I'm going to put them in a corner. And again, the important part is to kind of keep pieces together as much as possible. So I have the big pieces done first, and then I go in and squeeze in the little pieces. I also noticed that for whatever reason, I think I forgot to UV map this one or sew it together. So now I'm just like, whoops, I'm going to go in and UV map this piece, make sure everything's good. Not the best UV mapping I've ever done. So I'm going to go through and try to cut it and move it around, make sure it looks as best as possible. So this one's going to look like a little T once I'm done, because on the left side, I've got it cut. So I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. And I have to get in there because of the beveled edges. So shift right click cut, shift right click unfold, unfold, and then there you go. Again, I'm just trying to find places like, can I fit you here? Can I scale you a little bit? Can I move this up a little bit? What's this piece? Okay, well, I think you should belong with, with the other UVs for the same piece, things like that. I'm also slightly rotating them to try to align them a little bit. Now there is a button that does that, and I should have used it. I thought about overlapping these UVs, and then I decided I wasn't. So if you do overlapping UVs, the purpose for that is to make they share the same texture. Here's another piece that I'm going to go ahead and try to scale and fit as much information as possible. So again, I'm trying to rotate, move, slightly scale, things like that to try to fit it as best as possible. And again, I'm not making major moves. It's just a small scales. And this one, I know there's going to be some detail in there. So I wanted these to be a little bit bigger. So I did scale them up a little bit. Here, I'm trying to make sure that they're facing the correct way. So I moved them down to the where it says UV01. I wanted to just make sure it's facing the right way. It's not like, if I start texturing, it's going to be backwards. So here I am just trying to move things around, trying to make sure everything fits. You can see that I'm taking up way more of the 0 to 1 space than at the beginning with the automatic. Now again, with the automatic layout, if you have to do something fast, like I've done it before where I'm like, I need to get this done, here you go. But if you're trying to do something professional, then make sure you spend the time in laying it out accordingly. Because it's important. The texture is going to be important, and you want to maximize your 0 to 1 space because the more UV space it takes, the better your textures. And there we go. It is done. UVs. All squeeze into the 0 to 1 space. Center the pivot, delete the history, freeze the transformation, and you are ready for texturing. And that's what's going to be next. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. If you did, please like and subscribe. That is your message to me, letting me know that you like this content and that you want to see more. Don't forget to share. If you know somebody that would like to UV map a hard surface object like a rifle, then please share my videos. That would be amazing. That would help the YouTube algorithm, and it would also help me out. Don't forget to take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. There you will find free ebooks, resources, and so much more. So take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Keep creating, and the next thing we're going to do is texture this weapon.